Hello, everyone, and welcome back to the Black Lawyers Podcast. Today, we have the pleasure of interviewing Attorney Jazz from Jazz Talks Law. Hi, how are you?
Hey, I'm good, girl. How are you?
I'm so excited to do this episode because, as you know, we are coming up on the bar exam, and here at the Black Lawyers Podcast, we are trying to get
Yes.
more Black attorneys. So, um, this episode, I want to say, I want to say for last season, it was definitely in the top three episodes listened to. So
Oh, wow.
it just goes to show how much people want tips and advice and guidance regarding the bar exam. So we are super
Absolutely.
honored to have you back because you do this 24/7. I don't know how you do it. I mean, I know you love to help it.
Woo.
I can't think about the bar. The bar in itself just I'm like, even doing this episode,
Traumatizing.
it gives me a little anxiety, which we'll talk about.
Yeah.
Um, but before we jump into bar stuff, for those listening, we always start off with hot topics. So Jazz is going to play around with us. So the first topic is dealing with education, actually, diversity and inclusion in the state of Florida. I didn't go to school in Florida. I think I've only maybe visited Florida maybe three times, doing South Beach. I don't know a lot about Florida, but the running joke with Florida
Yes.
is there are always like issues going on, right? In Florida. And so Governor DeSantis um, has a lot of controversial bills out. And at first, there was a bill
Hmm.
about DEI, which, if you don't know, is diversity and inclusion programs and anything related to diversity and inclusion in terms of even extracurricular activities, not just the curriculum, that it being excluded moving forward. He had some legislation that was pending. Well, went through recently. And so now, if you live in the state of Florida, any public institutions, particular universities, are not allowed to have any funding regarding DEI
Hmm.
curriculum or activities. So this means if you are in a sorority or fraternity of color, whether it be Black, Hispanic, Asian, doesn't matter, that affects that. It obviously affects any sort of groups or clubs regarding LGBTQ issues. And obviously, it affects the actual curriculum. So there's certain things, there's studies called African American studies and things like that. They are not allowed to
Hmm.
teach that anymore. And so I think it's
Hmm.
unfortunate that it's gone this far and that a state, individually has the power to make that sort of decision. But that is how
Hmm.
our Constitution is set up. The states are allowed to rule on certain things for their state. So I just wanted to hear your thoughts on it because, I mean, you are very much in education with LSAT and Bar Prep. What are your thoughts on that?
Hmm. Well, I think first and foremost, as my shirt says, this is for the governor of Florida, and anyone that agrees with his policies. The world has way bigger problems than girls that kiss girls and boys that kiss boys. The world has way bigger problems than the Divine Nine, who is here to encourage scholarship and service in our communities. The state of Florida has way bigger problems, okay? And we could go down the list and really throw some shade if we would like, such as the white woman who murdered someone that knocked on her door after she harassed her child. So I think Florida has way bigger problems on their plate than picking at folks that aren't directly picking on them. I also think that this is the time for us, the folks that they're targeting, to put our foot down. There's a time and a place for protest, and I think this is the time and the place. And when I say protest, I'm not talking about the traditional route. I'm talking about, for example, I was in Miami a few weeks ago for Magic City Miami Fest, which is a Black lesbian weekend that's hosted in Miami. And we had an amazing time. Shout out to the people that put that weekend together. I'm mentioning that because some folks are like, "Oh, we're boycotting Florida. We're not going to Florida." No, I think we should be there even more. And what I would like to see even more is for the leaders of all of these groups, so the Divine Nine, so the leader of all the different Black lesbian groups, for all these groups to come together, and to take a stand and to say we aren't going anywhere. You know, there's a two-word saying that I love called good trouble. I think this is the time, and rest in peace to that great man. I think this is the time for us to not back down. At one point, it was illegal for Black and whites to marry each other. So that's what I think about that.
Well, it's funny that you say that John Lewis's Good Trouble. That's one of our T-shirts we sell on our site. So we're gonna send you a Good Trouble shirt. We're gonna send you some other. We're gonna send you some other stuff, but we'll send you, since you mentioned that, we'll definitely make sure you get a Good Trouble shirt from the blacklawyers.com website. But speaking of that, yes, I definitely think this is the time, and ironically, to your point, the NAACP, because of the DEI stuff with DeSantis said, you know, issued literally a travel warning. Like, don't go there. Don't even go to Florida. Florida is hostile. But you know, the thing is, there are people that live there. They can't afford to just
they don't have that leave to move.
So I get at some level the NAACP was trying to take a stand, like, hey, if we pull our dollars, maybe that will, you know, affect it in some way. Which isn't like not, you know, it's understandable to look at it from that viewpoint, but I do like the additional point that you said, well, some of us still need to go down there to protest. Like, we're not going to just like avoid Florida forever and treat it like a different country.
No, we're not.
Yeah.
And I'm even questioning, I mean, this is probably a conversation for another day to really dive into it, but I'm really questioning the constitutionality of everything he's suggesting. So I'm excited to see where this conversation goes. I don't know if you're aware of like the ACLU filing any type of lawsuit yet or anything like that, but you know, I'm definitely interested to see where this is.
Definitely. And I think it comes down to dollars. My understanding is legally, you know, the funding, they are allowed to say where the funding goes. But like you said, from a constitutional perspective, is there an illegal bias by removing it specifically from disenfranchised groups? That would be my
argument. We're talking about groups. We're talking about groups with a very high scrutiny when it comes to, you know, these type of things. So, you know, I'm just excited to see. And I say
I think definitely you're onto something about the high scrutiny. And look, this is a good segue to the bar stuff. I know some people are like, high scrutiny. Oh my God, they're already starting to talk about the bar stuff. Yes, you have to know that. I know you may, for the people that aren't lawyers listening to this, for the people that are in law school that are lawyers, if you recall a constitutional law, you have to know the different levels of scrutiny. If you are going
I still know a little something.
Listen, if you're going to discriminate someone based on race, just a quick review. If it's based on race, this is one of the elements. It has to rise to the level of high scrutiny, meaning there are a lot of things you would have to prove that justifies that discrimination. And so that is what Attorney Jazz is referring to. So if you didn't catch that, it may be an area of law. If you're getting ready to study for the bar, they want to go back and look at, because it
could be a bar exam question. I would hate for it to be a bar exam question, because this is an example of how, like, I feel like certain groups are biased on the exam. If you got that question as a bar exam, I mean, as a bar exam and that's a topic that's very personal and touching, that could either encourage you to give it your all, or that could really infuriate you and throw you off your game. So I don't want that to be a bar exam question, but it could be. You know what I mean? So
yeah, bar exams these days, they do try to take kind of these hot topics in the law, and they sometimes try to incorporate in the exam. And so just be aware that you could see something that looks a little familiar in the news in your bar exam. Speaking of exams, the other hot topic, the LSAT beginning in August of 2023, you can take it remotely. So if you're looking to get in law school and take the LSAT, you can take it remotely. What are your thoughts?
Oh, well, my thoughts was, okay. You know, during COVID, everything was remote. And we saw great results, you know, with it switching, you know, to virtual then. So I'm happy they are, you know, recognizing that and have made the decision to keep it virtual.
What do you think about them also maybe offering the bar exam back to a virtual option? Do you think?
I love it.
Yeah, I think
You
especially
know,
people trying to take exams on multiple cross, why do you have to physically, get a hotel room? You have to do so much to go into another state. I'm
absolutely.
hoping it trickles down to bar exams.
Because, listen, COVID was not a good time, right? But I will say, I feel like COVID did reveal a lot of things. For example, that these tests do not have to be in person. They used to say like, oh, like before COVID, oh, if it was virtual, folks might cheat or whatever, things like that. But COVID happened, they had no choice but to make it virtual, and they figured out a way to make it as quote unquote bulletproof, right? So to your point, one of the biggest hurdles with passing the bar exam, especially for minorities, is all the fees and expenses that go into it. And I believe we're going to talk more about that. But if we're eliminating, the in-person requirement, now you don't have to go get accommodations. I went to a law school in Macon. Me and my classmates had to travel to Atlanta to take the bar exam. We didn't have the option to take it in Macon. So, you're talking about 2 nights, hotels, et cetera, et cetera. And then additional expenses. So if it's virtual, no bar, no hotel, and then you got the folks who are super anxious about being in this room with 1,000 people,
Yeah.
eliminating that stress, people beside you coughing. Some years I know in Georgia there was an issue with people getting sick from the food they were offering. And then they failed, and it's just like, I got food poisoning from the food y'all offered me during my lunch break. So, long story short, I'm definitely here for it being virtual.
Absolutely. Well, with that being said, before we jump into some individual questions, that some of them actually have been submitted by people that
Oh,
had
nice.
questions about the bar exam. Before we get into those questions, we're going to do the Jasmine's do and don'ts of
Okay,
bar
I
prep.
got my signs ready.
She got her bar prep. So she has, if you're visually
Okay, let's
watching
let's
this,
let's try this
obviously
out.
she's got a yes sign and she's got a no sign.
Is that good? Is
Yeah.
that good?
So
That
I'm
work?
going to, yep, that works. So I'm going to propose to you some things that, happen before bar study, during bar study, and during the exam. And you tell me, is it a yes or a no? So
Okay.
first one up, studying without a course or a coach for those that just want to study on their own. Is that a yes
Is
or
that
a
a
no?
no? Is that a no? That's an
Definitely a
absolute
no. That's
no.
a no. Okay. So you got to figure it out, guys. That's a no. Um, Creating a study group during bar exam prep.
That's a
She
yes
put
and
up
a
yes
no.
and no. Okay, why yes and no? Why
Because
yes?
everyone is different. Some folks, a study group can be helpful. Some folks, a study group can be hurtful. Did I say that right? Yeah, one, it could be helpful for some and hurtful for others. So it just depends on you and what works best for you in law school.
Yeah, for sure. Okay, working while you're preparing to take the bar.
Yes. Oh wait.
Interesting.
No. I'm sorry. No.
No.
No. No.
Okay. So why do you
No.
recommend not working? Because it's about 10 weeks.
Well,
So,
let me say, I really want to say yes and no. Let's just do
okay.
that. Yes and no.
Okay.
And the reason being is because, unfortunately, the bar exam is such a barrier for some because of the financial obligation. There's a lot of time, that goes into bar exam prep. It is your full-time job, your part-time job, your Uber job, your hair braiding job on the side. Like, it is literally all you really have time for. So I say no to working because you really don't have time to work while you're studying. But unfortunately, you know, some of us, we cannot afford to not work, right? We're not in a position where the family is taking care of the bills, et cetera, et cetera. And all I have time to do all day is study.
Mhm.
So, for those folks, the journey is a little different.
Mhm.
There's a statistic out now that says, I put it on my Instagram page at Jazz Talks Law, where it basically talks about only 58% of black folks that took the bar exam passed recently.
Mhm.
But what folks don't realize is just even going into bar exam prep, a lot of us don't have the privilege of not working at all. I remember working that first month of bar prep. I needed a little income, but I also was trying to find a job because I knew, I figured out how to pay my rent for those 2 months or 3 months, but it's just not as easy for everyone to just not work.
And the thing is, it's not just rent. You still have to eat. You still have cell phone bill. You have utilities. There's so many things. I mean, definitely you can get your rent covered. That's the biggest thing. But there's so many other bills that just do not go away during this time period. So I can
Exactly.
understand why it's
Exactly.
maybe a yes and a no. Um, what about making actual, sometimes I'm like, oh, do you want to create more work for yourself? What about actually making study bar cards out of your outlines? Is that a yes or a no?
That is a yes,
Okay, yes,
with a
you think you should.
caveat.
Okay. Mhm.
With a caveat. The
Okay.
caveat to that would be you don't need to make them from scratch. You can use, for example, flashcards, critical pass flashcards, for example. I wouldn't say you need to do them from scratch though, because that's very time consuming. But you should definitely be incorporating flashcards into your studies, preferably that second month.
Okay, and what is it called again for people that are listening? Critical flashcards?
Critical pass
As
flashcards.
flashcards.
Yes.
So if they Google that, they can find that. Okay, good. I think that's
Yeah. Hmm.
okay. Here's some funner ones. Be on social media prior to the exam. So during your bar study, you're still, your social media accounts are still active. Is that a yes or no?
No.
Okay.
And
Okay.
that's for 90% of the people. No.
Yeah. I'm assuming you think it's just too much of a distraction.
It's too much of a distraction. And the reason being is comparison is the thief of all joy. So you're comparing your life, to everyone else's lives who's still going to the Beyonce concert, who's still enjoying the cookouts and the baby showers and
Hmm.
et cetera, et cetera. And you just in the library for 9, 10 hours and you are feeling, what is it, FOMO or something,
Fear of missing out.
something
Yep.
like that, fear of missing out.
Yep.
But for example, I would also say it depends on the people you follow too, because if you're following me on Instagram, then, and if I'm the only person you're following, then fine, because all you're seeing from me is motivation. All you're seeing from me is tips, strategies, For example, I'm about to announce today. I mean, if you're on my email list, you'll get it that way as well if you're not on social media. But today on Instagram, I'm going to announce that I'm offering a free yoga class this weekend. We're going to call it Bar Prep Yoga, to help people with their mental.
Mhm.
And so that'll be something you would see if you were on Instagram. But for the most part, I just find that it's a huge distraction. Or the news, there's, oh my God, every day we
Just
turn on the
I
news. There's
say
so
every day
many.
it's like a shooting or something. I know. It's like you said, you're inundated. This is for people not taking the bar. Sometimes I have to take a break from social media just
Yeah.
for the bad news. So yeah, I can understand why all of that could
Yeah.
be viewed as a distraction. Okay. What about starting a new relationship before the party?
Listen,
What if
bar
you meet
exam is
somebody?
day. Then and if they the one, they will be there 3 months from now. Okay.
Okay.
If it's meant to be, if they really are interested, they can wait for that first date to be August 1st. Okay. Y'all can
Okay.
even set the date now. Catch me outside after bar prep.
Okay, so that's a no
I
sign,
actually,
right?
oh, sorry. That's a no, 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 no.
She's not trying to hate on y'all. She's not trying to, what do they
No.
call it, cock block, but
Mm-mm.
she's just like that.
You're
Again,
gonna be
it's a
your
full.
price gonna go up when you pass that bar exam. Okay, now that first date needs to be the gold stake because you are a lawyer. They're taking a lawyer that they're taking to dinner. Okay.
That's a good way to put it. That's a great way to put it.
Yeah.
Um, you just mentioned yoga. So, what about keeping your exercise routine during bar study? Because some people have intense exercise routine. Yeah. Okay. Yeah.
Yes. That is how I survived bar prep. Every morning I went to the gym and played a Barbie lecture in my ear.
Okay. What about, okay, so exercise is one thing, but sometimes people are on crazy diets. Should you indulge and just eat what you want? Should you do a diet during bar exam? Is that, something
I
you would
don't
recommend?
so diet, no.
Okay.
I say no because diet typically has a negative connotation.
Hmm.
And it's typically hard to follow a diet. So I'm going to say no, but I'm going to say yes to clean eating. Yes to um, making it your norm. You know, it was very helpful that I was clean eating during bar prep. It helped with my energy levels. You know, I was 140 pounds. Like, you know, I was in like some of the best shape of my life, and that helped me with bar prep. So
it's good to know. Okay, shifting to actual exam day. Should you bring your lunch on exam day so that you don't have to go out? Is that a yes or no?
it's a yes and a no.
You are such a lawyer
And the
playing this.
reason being, I'm sorry, because like, for example, in Georgia, our law schools come to our testing site during our lunch break, and they provide our lunch free of
Oh,
charge.
wow. Must be nice.
Right.
Experience.
So literally during our lunch break, we would go to classroom A, and the dean and our, you know, some of our favorite teachers, professors were there with our lunch. Like, we didn't have to think about it. But I also had a peanut butter sandwich and some chips in the car just in case I needed something, you know, that because if I didn't like what they had or whatever.
And I pose this question mainly because I found that I didn't really want to spend time looking for food nearby, having to travel far outside the testing center because people were like going to look for food and I'm like, that's just adding on the pressure to get back in time. And I just wanted to be near the testing site at all times. I didn't want to add that level of pressure.
Did you take it in Cali? Where did you take it?
I took it originally. I took it in DC. Originally, I took it in DC.
Okay.
So I took it.
And then it also depends on your state, because in Georgia, if you went to one of the Georgia law schools, they had you covered. But if you didn't, and you were like from DC or wherever, and you were taking the Georgia bar exam, and you didn't attend law school in Georgia, they had vendors on site. So you didn't have to,
so like you said, it's going to depend on the state. It's going to depend on the state.
But and those are questions to ask. Those are questions to ask before.
So you're prepared. What about talking to people during your exam break? Is that a yes or no? No. I think I know the answer.
It's gonna probably throw you off.
Throw you off. Yeah.
It's gonna probably throw you off.
Like, girl, did you put B? Did you put B? Did you put B for that answer? Oh, I didn't say that. I said this instead. And then you sitting over there like,
and now you
did I write that? Yeah.
Exactly. Now you on the next part of the bar exam, still thinking about what you did 2 hours ago. No.
Exactly. What about studying the day before? Is that a yes or no? Should you be studying the day before your exam?
No.
Okay. Yeah, most people say no.
At that point, either you know it or
you either know it or you don't, right? What about studying in between the exam days? So most people take the writing first, and then the second day they take the multiple choice. Do you think there should be any form of studying between the 2 days? Yes. Okay.
I had one-sheeters, you know, for each subject, and I used those at my leisure in between. I did.
Okay. Day of the exam, you don't know the answer to several questions. Maybe there are about 5 questions you just don't know the answer to. Is it a yes or no to just choose one letter? So there's A, B, C, or D. Choose one letter and only use that letter for the questions that you don't know.
Is it a yes or no? I'm going to say,
do it that way. No.
No.
Okay, why?
I think you can skip those questions altogether and go to the questions that you don't know. And if you have time at the end, come back to those. And then I don't know the statistics on if it's better to do
because you have a 25% chance, right, of getting it right.
Right.
Some people say just pick one letter and just stick with that letter instead of
I'm saying no to doing that first.
Doing that.
Now, go to the questions you know and get all the points you know, and then so it's a no if you do that first. It's a yes if you do that at the end.
At the end, you're running out of time, right? Okay, all right. Because you're only getting credit for the ones you get correct. So, last but not least, retaking the bar exam more than once if you do not pass. Is that a yes or no?
retaking the bar exam more than once if you do not pass? Absolutely.
Mhm.
And I think Michelle Obama, Hillary Clinton, Amber, so many folks I know. One of my very successful lawyer friends, Jasmine, Attorney Dion Tedder. He's a South Carolina congressman. He took the bar exam like 3 times. Like,
Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah, there's so many. I think Angela Rye also mentioned, I think she didn't pass DC, but then she took Maryland. I know it was an exam in the DC area. She just,
yep,
let me just try this other one. Let me see it. It worked out. And she actually doesn't really even really
yeah,
practice, but she wanted to take it. She wanted to be licensed. So yes, there's no shame. Let that be one of the
yeah.
takeaways. If you don't remember anything else for this conversation today, there's
Anything
let there
else?
be no shame in retaking it. It is not a measure of your intelligence. It's not even a measure
Mm-hmm.
of how well you did in law school. It's really, are you able
Mm-mm.
to take an exam? There's some people that aren't that smart, but they
Mm-hmm.
learn how to take the exam and they pass. So
Absolutely.
that says a lot
Absolutely.
there. So it's about learning how to take this specific exam. It's definitely not a measure of your.
Exactly. That's it.
All right.
Absolutely.
So now we're going to jump into some of your specific questions based on your perspective, based on what you experienced in taking the bar exam, and some advice. What is something you wish? And thank you again for playing Jasmine's Do's and Don'ts of
It's
bar
fun.
exam.
I enjoyed it.
Yes, yes, yes. So specifically, what is something you wish you would have known before taking the bar exam?
Um, it's funny because when I really thought about that, there's nothing I really wish I knew. I
Hmm.
had a very much a approach of, not like overwhelming myself on the front end and just taking it a day at a time. Um, you know, so I felt like I went into it with my eyes wide open and I was so focused
Hmm.
that I was able to absorb, everything I needed to know as of day one.
Hmm.
And not just that, but I felt like throughout law school, I did everything that I was told to do. You know what I mean? And so I don't know. There wasn't anything I really felt like, looking back that I wish I knew. I mean, I also passed the first time, so yeah. I mean, maybe my answer would be different if I didn't, but there isn't anything I felt like I should have known beforehand.
Okay. What if, and you may or may not know this, which state technically has the hardest bar exam to your knowledge?
I'm gonna go with California.
Okay.
They have like the highest like requirement, in terms of score passage, I think it's absolutely ridiculous. And yeah, I know many, many bright folks who struggle to pass the
Because of the
California bar.
California
And
exam.
luckily my friend Nija, one of my very like law besties, she passed them the first time. I'm like, girl, like how did you do it? By the way, I need to get her in Bartivity to talk with my students. But yeah, definitely California.
Hmm.
It used to be New York, but I think California is really that taking that top notch spot.
What how important is, and you spoke about this a little earlier, but how important is mental health during both bar prep and the day up? Because sometimes people are like,
Yeah.
oh, you just throw that word around mental health, but it's a real thing.
No, yeah. Honestly, I don't think you can pass the bar exam without some type of wrap around your mental health. You can be as smart as you want to be, but everything is mental. You have to be able to block out the noise while you're studying. You have to, be able to sleep at night. You like mentally, you have to be prepared for this exam. It's not just about knowing all the constitutional law information. It's not just about knowing all the rules of evidence. It's the mental side. Studying for the bar exam can be very depressing. It can be very isolating.
Hmm.
It brings so many questions in your mind that you don't know the answers to that make you anxious. Your livelihood is depending on passing this test.
Right.
Having a therapist, being on my anxiety and depression medicine, yoga, working out consistently, all of that contributed to me passing the bar exam the first time around.
For sure. What is the average cost of taking one state bar? And tips on how to get these fees covered.
I was smiling because I'm afraid to tell you. And I'm afraid to tell you because I know that some folks will use that as a
Like,
as a
I don't want to
reason
take it.
to,
Right. Right.
yeah, or to not pursue law school. But unfortunately, you can easily spend over $6,000 just on the bar exam, because we're talking about, there's the software, for the actual bar exam. There's the NPRE, which is the ethical test before you can even take the bar exam. We're talking about your bar prep course, which can be anywhere from $1,000 to $3,000. We're talking supplements, such as Varsivity, such as the flashcards that I mentioned. We're talking about your accommodations if you are taking it in person. We're talking about the hotel, could be $200 a night. It is very expensive, and when you add, and then of course there's character and fitness. You have to pay those fees before you can even sit for the test. So when you add everything up, you're looking at, unfortunately, at least $6,000, maybe even $7,000. But what I did was my third year of law school, I applied for as many scholarships as possible. If you aren't aware and you're listening, there are a lot of scholarships as a third year that are geared towards your bar exam fees and things like that. I share as much of those details as possible on my Jazz Talks Law listserv. So you can visit www.jazztalkslaw.com and subscribe to, so I can make you aware of as much as possible. You can also ask your employer if you have graduated with that offer letter. Congrats to you. Use it to your advantage. Ask your employer to help with those supplements. I actually had one of my Varsivity students, their employer, a law firm, sent over a check to me directly to cover their Varsivity fee. So you definitely got to look into those scholarships, those grants, and also seeing if your school can help you. A lot of times, if they don't already, because this day and time, a lot of schools are starting to cover those bar prep fees. They're starting to cover, if you need some flashcards, they'll send them to you. So reaching out to your law school, reaching out to your employer, looking into the scholarships, the grants. And I know one of the scholarships I got, it wasn't necessarily for bar prep, but what I told them was that I was like, listen, and they were going to cut the check, like, I want to say the end of May, or was it the beginning or the end of June or something like that? And I said, listen, I need help paying my rent. My rent is due this day. So can I get that check early? And they gave it to me early, So it's just about asking, using your resources, et cetera, et cetera.
And also, speaking of scholarships, so one of the things we do for both the Black TV Lawyer and the Black TV Doctor collection, we actually give students scholarships that's
nice.
part of the money for
those.
Yeah, so when you're buying the Black TV Lawyer shirt, if you're buying the Black TV Doctor shirt, some of those proceeds actually go towards our scholarship we give out on the blacklawyers.com. If you need, coverage for those board fees for doctors, obviously for lawyers, bar exam fees. And then also, if you're not taking the bar just yet, but even your books, we give also, you have a choice of taking the money and using it for your books for the semester. So we give that out annually. We're looking to do it more than once a year as we raise more money. But you definitely stay tuned for when that application kind of opens and closes so that you can take advantage of the blacklawyers.com scholarship as well. Let's see. I think, where were we? Okay. How many MBE questions should one do if they want a good score in this section? And for those of you listening, MBE is just the multiple choice part. It doesn't matter which state you're in. Everybody takes the same multiple choice. The essay is based on your state law, but the MBE is multiple choice for all states. So it's 200 questions on the day of. So I've gotten a variety of answers of this, of like, this is how many you need to take to kind of be safe. So what is your number? How many questions should someone?
Well, let me what's the word? Preface my answer, or however that goes. If you shoot for the star, or you shoot for the moon, you land amongst the stars, or something like that. You know what I'm saying?
Right.
So I always shoot for higher. And if you hit here, I'm actually very proud of you. Okay. So I'm going to say that. So I'm going to say 1800
Okay. That's
question.
about,
That way,
so if you do maybe
yeah,
13 or 14, it's still within the range of, got it. But you should be shooting for
absolutely.
18. Okay. That's a good number.
And then I would also add a tip that I give to my Bartivity students is shooting for 102 seconds per question. Now, this approach actually gives you a cushion because you actually have about 108 seconds.
Mm.
But if you shoot for 102, you'll give yourself a cushion. And of course, you can't do timing until you can get it done on time.
Right.
But
Right.
once it's time to time yourself, shoot for 102 seconds per question.
And that's an additional tip. Whether it be essays or questions, get it correctly untimed first so that you at least know that.
Yes.
Then go back to taking
Absolutely.
practice exams.
I tell everyone, you can't do it timed if you can't do it untimed. Like y'all are beating yourself up because you can't do it in 20 seconds. You can't do it in 20 minutes. So that's
right. You would have never gotten it right because you don't know the law.
Right.
So with that being said, we talked about the multiple choice written essays. When you're in prep, or let's just say it's the day of the exam, unfortunately, let's say you don't know exactly the rule. What is your tip on still answering? Because you still should put something down on the paper and you will get points for something. So what is your strategy in doing when you come across an essay question and you really don't know the rule? So how do you answer the question?
So two things. One, you may not know the entire rule, but you probably know a part of it, right? You remember something. So start with what you remember. Get going. And when you get going, that's probably going to trigger something else, right? You just have to get going. You need to write what you know and just get that brain memory starting to go, because we treat this like a file cabinet that we're opening up. Our brain is a file cabinet. And once you pull it out and you start to read the sheet, meaning you put what you know, that's going to trigger you to keep reading the rest of that sheet in your brain. So you have to write what you know. Don't just not write anything because you don't remember it all. Write what you know. Start there. And then part two to that is remembering. I actually, thinking back, I think this happened to me. I had a property question. I knew the rule, but I couldn't remember if it was an easement or if it was something else. I don't remember, but I think I called it an easement, but it wasn't an easement. But I knew the rule. And instead of stressing about, is it an easement or is it this? I just picked whatever. The rule was right. I probably called it the wrong thing, but I obviously still passed because I knew the rule. So that's kind of the opposite of your question, but both are still valuable.
Yeah, definitely, for sure. Get something down on the paper, please. Laptop, or write the exam?
I would ask you what you did in law school. I was a laptop person, so I definitely did the laptop. If you are the type of person where writing is your friend and technology is your enemy, then it may be best for you to write. But what I will say is whatever you decide to do, you have to practice that way all throughout bar prep. You cannot be writing all throughout bar prep and then a week before decide you want to use a laptop. I don't even know if you can do that because there's a deadline to, pay that fee for your laptop or whatever.
The laptop, right? But just typically just stick with one or the other. And the other thing I was going to mention,
I think you just stick with it, yeah.
Right. And the other thing I was going to mention, I forgot about the essays. IRAC, issue rule, application conclusion. If you freeze up, just remember that you're writing something down, and that never forget that for essays. So even if you don't, just even if, like you said, you don't know the name of the rule, describe what you think the rule is, and then move on to applying the facts and concluding. A lot of times
you may not know the rule, but you know the structure.
Right. And you actually get points for being organized and things like that. So you get other points for other things. So, even if it's not absolutely right, if it looks nice and clean and structured, you may get some points from your bar. Your bar exam grader is a human being. It's not a computer. I mean, the multiple choice is a computer. But the essays, which are like the blessing and the curse, you could get a really nice grader that gives you the benefit of the doubt. Like, you know what? That was the wrong word, but I know what she's talking about, so I'm going to go ahead and give her the point. So, IRAC, I just wanted to briefly mention that if that's something you're struggling with your essays. 30 days before the exam, what are your, I don't know, what is your top 1 or 2 tips 30 days before? Because at this point, are we 30?
30 days.
Not 45, but 30 days before, what is your
So
tip?
so the first thing that comes in my mind is like 30 days before is like right before or after like July 4th weekend, right? Um, and my top tip at that point, you should have a good base with your prep course, and it's time to really level up the flashcards. So, I'm not a fan of using supplements from day one. I like for my Bartivity students to get accustomed to their course. But 30 days out, you should be accustomed to your course and you should be able to add on to that, by adding in half a stack of flashcards, by adding in using some mnemonic software or whatever supplement it is that you want to use. So 30 days in, you should be in a flow with adding in that supplement for sure.
Day of exam tips. Any
Mm-hmm.
that come to mind, like the day of the
Yes. One, utilize your car.
exam.
I don't really want to go a lot further than to say that your car is your friend. It is your safe space.
Right? You don't have
It's
to talk
only
to
you
anybody.
in that car.
You
You don't have to talk to anybody. Nobody knows what's in your car.
can eat your
It is
snack. You can do everything in your car. So use your car as your safe
use your
space
car. I stayed in my car until the very last minute
to
possible.
go back in.
Two,
Mhm.
yes, and to enter. Two, I was very focused. Even one of my best friends in law school, I walked in that building, I did see her, I gave her a head nod, and I kept it moving. We didn't talk to each other. We did, and it was no hard feelings. It wasn't, because you got the chatty Cathy's and all them folks. That wasn't me. The nervous Nancy's, all those folks. No, I was very focused. I went to my seat. It was personal. I focused.
Yeah, you look, God didn't take you this far to just to only bring you this
No,
far, as they say. You had to go across the finish line. And
look,
to
you
your
can catch
point,
up in 2 weeks.
yes, you don't want to distract if you don't have to. I agree. Um, Discuss just briefly the stigma that comes along with not passing. I understand, you passed the first time, but the stigma that comes along with not passing the first time, especially among people of color,
Mm-hmm.
and specifically as far as I'm concerned, this is the Black Lawyers
Yeah.
Podcast, Black folks, not passing. Why is there a stigma? I mean, I'm sure if you're a white person, you don't pass, you're still upset, but I don't really feel like there's as much of a stigma. I mean, you have the Kennedys that took it over and over again. You have Hillary Clinton that took it over and over
Mm-hmm.
again. Nobody cares. Uh, yeah, just your thoughts on the stigma.
I think a lot of it is the pressure that we put on ourselves. We have a lot riding on passing. So when we don't pass, it's such a personal moment of defeat.
Mhm.
But the truth of the reality is we have to remember that we are going into the bar exam on a totally different playing field than most folks. Earlier we talked about just the financial barriers in itself. I just discussed the $7,000 that it took for you to even take this exam. So when you don't pass and you realize essentially you got to pay that 7,000 again or whatever, it's devastating.
Mhm.
It is very devastating. It's the financial portion of retaking again. And then you have the folks who may lose a job because they didn't pass. So the repercussions for us are way different.
Mhm.
But I will say that I've been practicing now for over 6 years. I have my own law firm, and I don't think even one time I've had anyone ever ask me about my bar exam experience. When I say anyone, I'm talking about my clients. No one has ever said, how many times did it take me to pass the bar exam? That has never, ever,
Never comes
ever
up.
been asked.
Never comes up.
Never. You know what I mean? So, I think it's more of just the personal, like, I gotta take this test again, I gotta get the 7K together, I don't know how I'm gonna pay my bills, et cetera, et cetera. I might lose this job, all this and that. But once you get to Esquire, nobody cares about how many times it took you to pass the bar exam. And in fact, I just saw this meme. I think I'm going to post it soon. It basically talked about I passed the bar exam, but I don't know how to file a motion. Like that is the realest thing. Like
Yeah, you
that is
passing
the
the
realest
exam doesn't
thing.
mean that you are all of a sudden you just walk out and you're just like this experienced attorney. It still requires experience training
No,
that you just don't get by answering a multiple choice question, right? Or even answering an NPT or an essay question, right? Yeah, it's gonna come.
and you and I know, we both know plenty of lawyers who pass even after the first try who are horrible at practicing law.
Yeah. So
So
trust me, while we want you to pass, don't assume that because you don't pass, that is an indicator of how great of attorney you'll be, you know, what's to come. Don't let that be an
yeah,
indicator. Why don't you just briefly close out with more about your Bartivity, give you an opportunity to plug that and what that's about, and if someone
yeah,
is interested in your bar prep program, give our folks a little
absolutely.
bit.
So this time last year, after many cries for help with the bar exam, I recognized it was time to level up my coaching offers by extending to the bar prep portion. So what we did was we created Bartivity, which is a bar prep course supplement. We're providing you strategy, we're providing accountability, we're providing just that source of Black womanish is, or whatever you want to call it, that's really filling in the gaps of your bar prep course. So, every other week we're having live coaching calls where we're not just encouraging you and giving you motivation, but we're also going through practice essays. We're also going through multiple choice questions. I'm looking at your schedule this on the 17th. We are going to go through our Bartivity student schedules one by one and make sure they are utilizing their time correctly. This Saturday, we're going to do a group Bartivity bar prep yoga class because we're not just preaching that you guys need to be mindful and work out and take care of your mind, but we're actually making sure you guys are doing that. So, we created Bartivity to really help those folks who need more than just their bar prep course. Those bar prep courses are designed for the mass, but this is designed for us.
Right. Does it matter which state you're in? Can any state
It
be a
does
part of?
not.
Okay.
No, and the reason being is that our Bartivity instructors that focus directly on essays and that focus on MBE, UBE, their approach is done in a way so that no matter the particular state you're taking it in, you're getting helpful advice, hints, tips, information, etc.
When is your opening so that people just know each year? When is the open
Yeah,
close
so
for each cycle? Because you can take it in July.
yeah.
So what are your
So we
open?
do a cohort for every July and February. So our July cohort opened earlier, well, late last month, late last May.
Okay.
And the July cohort will close June 17th. So that will be your last chance to enroll for the July cohort. The June 17th deadline is because that's when we are hosting our essay coaching call. And that is like a non-negotiable. You need to be in that call if you want to participate in Bartivity. So, you have until July 17th to enroll. This Saturday, July 10th, we are offering free bar prep yoga, whether you're enrolled in Bartivity or not. Of course, the essay coaching call on the 17th is for those who are enrolled in Bartivity. But yeah, that's our cutoff date, July 17th. I'm sorry, June 17th.
And then and for the February exam, what is the open and close date?
Our February bar prep starts in November.
November.
And
So when it
enrollment starts. Yes,
Okay.
it closes. It closes at the end of December. You have to be enrolled by the end of December. Because that winter break period is crucial. When you're studying for that February bar exam. And I am happy to offer to anyone listening to this podcast a special discount. If you are recognizing you could benefit from Bartivity, you can use Black Lawyer Podcast to take 30% off of your enrollment. Thanks to you for having me on here today. I am happy to do that for your listeners or anyone you know personally that could benefit from Bartivity. All they have to do is visit www.bartivity.net and use Black Lawyer Podcast, that discount code at checkout.
Thank you for offering that to our listeners. I also want to close out with our Black Excellence Moment of the Week, which is actually related to the bar
Yes.
exam. Matthew Graham from Maryland passed, I believe, with a 309, which put him in the 94th percentile. So he received like a record breaking, or one of the record breaking passage scores from Maryland. If you're in a state that doesn't tell your score, they just tell you you passed because you'll never know what your score is. But for states like Maryland, if you pass, they still give you your score. And so he's been featured all over the news because, again, the passage rate is
Mhm.
just not that high for Black students. And so we just want to congratulate him. Like I said, the average score is 266. So for him to get a 309 was excellent. So, let that be
Yes,
your motivation. I mean, this man was a newlywed, had a baby, was working full time.
exactly.
So this, it's
Knocking
motivation.
down
That
all the barriers.
if Matthew can do it, you can do it. And with that
Absolutely.
said, we are always rooting for everyone Black. Take care, everyone.
Yes, absolutely.